Okay, so I took all the instructions for the shaping from the form computer and drew out the shape of the piece, the front piece. So it was knit straight until row counter, what was it, 106 here. So I decreased 4, 107 decreased 4, 108 decreased 2, and so on and so forth until the neckline shaping and the shoulder shaping. And you'll notice that these green squares are kind of squished. They're not actual squares, but they are 10 cells by 10 cells, so 10 stitches by 10 rows. But since my work is going to be not square, it's going to be squished by stitches and rows, I made the cells in Excel the pixel height to match it. So I actually made the pixels height half of the measurements for the width of 40 stitches and 40 rows. I did half because I couldn't zoom out anymore when I did the full size. And so I just did half, and then that got me able to zoom out to see the whole thing properly. So now when I make my squares for the work for my motif, they actually look square on this diagram. So these squares are 18 stitches and 26 rows here. 9 stitches and 13 rows is the base square. So this is a Minecraft creeper face, and it is very geometric. So it's a bunch of big pixels. So I need this to look square. It's going to look wrong if it doesn't look relatively square. But other freeform charts, or if you made some mountain scenery or something, whatever you make, or just a graphic, it doesn't necessarily have to be so square, but this particular item has to look square based on what it is, otherwise it's going to look off. Okay, so now I'm going to knit according to the instructions we wrote down in this chart here. So I'm going to do a cast on and then border to row count 18, and I'm actually going to do one more row of the border after that because I need to increase the stitch size. And if I'm using the console and on the back, that's what I would do. I would do the full 18 of the regular stitch size. It would give me a warning and border, and then I would do one more row. So I'm going to match that on the front. So I'm going to do my cast on, and then do the ribbing and one row extra to increase the stitch size to transfer the stitches. Okay. So I'm supposed to cast on from left 45 to right 45. So I'm actually going to pull up the needles from left 45, every other needle, up into right 44. That way I will be observing the needle roll. Racking handles up for this, and then on the back bed I'm bringing up the needles in between those stitches all the way to the end, and then the rightmost needle will be on the front bed and the leftmost needle on the back bed. I'm going to put my edge springs on, all 4 of them, making sure the latch is closed when I put it on. Okay, I'm setting my row counter at 0. N, stitch size 2. So I reset it all the way to the start, and then I do 4 notches. So I don't have to actually look at them. I don't have to lean over and check what the back looks like. So I know that's on 2 on the front and back. Okay, I'm not going to use strippers. I am going to use a cast-on comb. That's mainly because of the first row. You can make it tighter if you don't use the strippers. If you use the strippers, you can start this with stitch size 2, but when you run it back, it's going to push down the work a little bit more. Or when you start here, it's going to be, or if you put the strippers in to begin with, then it's not going to be as tight as it would be if you didn't use any strippers. Okay, so just one row. Okay, get my cast on comb. I have a little paint mark here showing the center, so I try to line that up with the center here. So that's that mark. That's close enough. Put the wire in. Okay, change to CX and CX. And I do the same thing where I reset the dial all the way to A, and then on the back it's B, C. So I know I'm on C already, and I didn't have to reach over and look. I didn't have to lean over and look. Okay, and now I change the stitch size to 3.5, so that's 6 notches. Okay, I'm gonna hold the comb down a little bit, and I'm going to do 2 rows with that. Okay. And again, no strippers because you don't want that to hit the cast on comb and damage the strippers. Okay, now back to NN and increase the stitch size to 475, so that's 5 notches. Okay, one more row completes the cast on. And now we are going to continue in ribbing. And N 475 front and back, same settings. I'm on row counter 4, sorry. I'm going to go to row counter 18, which is 14 more rows. Here we go. Okay, I didn't put strippers in. I could have put strippers in after a few rows, but since I was only doing a few rows, I just held the cast on comb down here and just did them without the strippers. Now I need one more row, increased stitch size. I am going to go stitch size 6. So I'm going to do 5 notches. Okay, and then 1 row. Okay, I'm going to move the lock out of the way some more. I'm going to move all the edge springs out of the way. I'm going to move the work to the back because when you use the picto, you use the back. So I am going to pull up all the needles. I'm going to move the work to, and then a few extra on the front and back just to kind of get started in the motion. Making sure they're not sticking up too much. Okay, now I get my transfer tool. U100E is what I'm using. Setting 3, and this is going to go to the right of the work. Okay, making sure I have room on the left side so I don't get stuck and I'm in halfway for some movements. Okay, next I do the racking handle. It's about 8 o'clock or so. I'm going to pull up some needles to test, see how close they are, whether they almost touch. You don't want them to actually touch and knock each other. Okay, and the camera's in the way a little bit, so let's try to do a smooth move. Let's see how that goes. Okay. 1, 2. Okay, I have one miss right here. Try to pull up all the ply, put it on the stitch, test it, see if it's okay. And I think that I only had that one miss, and that was probably off camera actually because that was all the way to the right almost. Okay, now I'm bringing down the needles in the front, and the extra needles I put on the side to kind of keep the motion smooth. Okay, taking the U100E off and storing it to the side. I'm going to put the edge springs back on the back bed. Flip in the latch closed in the process. Okay, now if you were doing a different pattern, let's say you were doing some graphic with the console, you can't switch to stitch pattern A, B, C, whatever when you have the lock on the left. So you would need to just knit one row of stockinette to get back to the right side. So I am also going to do one row of stockinette as well, but that is the pattern, so it doesn't matter. But for stockinette, the stitch size is 675, so that's 3 more notches. That's N on the back, and on the front, we're just going to have GX. There's nothing on the front, so N on the back. But I am still going to have my row counter edge spring up here so that it still counts the rows. So I'm on row counter 19 right now. And on my chart, I'm going to go to row counter 46. Okay, I'm going to pull up my extra slack I got for moving the lock over extra. Okay, and here we go. And I think I mentioned that I put the black stripper, was putting the black strippers in. I put the black strippers in. Okay. Okay, I'm going to use the motor here. I'm going to test the distance. Let's try that again. Okay, I need to go a little further. So I'm going to move that end stop. I'm going to move this end stop a little bit too. And go to the right. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, and then I'm going to go until row counter 46. That's 46. Okay, I'm going to take the motor off. I am going to put the back on GX. Take the eyelet out. Take the strippers out. And then move this lock all the way to the left. That way the yarn is free. I'm free to access the work here. Okay, and we don't need the edge springs or that row counter anymore, actually. So I'm going to get rid of these edge springs as well. I'm going to drop down the front bed.